Hey y'all, welcome back to day 17 of this horse trailer renovation series. After probably almost a year, actually, I have almost finished getting through all of this footage. I think I have about 2 more episodes left, maybe 1, if I can get it all in the next episode. So it'll be finished soon. And I just appreciate you guys that have been with me since day 1. And I'm eventually going to come out with one that's got all of them put together so you can just watch the entire renovation in one video. All right, let's dive in. So if you came from day 16, you know that I had just made these shelves right here. So I am installing them in the bathroom. I have 2 shelves, one that kind of covers the water heater on the bottom, and then the second one is really just for storage purposes. And then this is actually the side to one of the cabinets in the kitchen. And I think I've already rounded out the corner to this, and I'm just adding that framing piece. That way I can put a shelf at the bottom, and then this will kind of just slide right in to the side of the cabinet that I already have built after I get all of this stained and prepped. And those other little pieces of wood are actually the fronts to all of the shelving that I built in the bathroom. So I wanted kind of a little overhang on the shelves, so when you're driving around, the stuff doesn't just fly off of the shelves in the bathroom. So that's going to be stapled to the front of the shelf that I already made as like a little lip, just to kind of make sure things don't move around. And then the last piece here is just a bunch of trim that I'm going to go ahead and install in the trailer. So I actually got to a point where I was ready to test the propane system, and when I did, I found out that there was a giant leak. So this propane regulator that kind of connects the 2 propane tanks was just pouring propane out of it. So the regulator itself was actually bad, and then the hoses were kind of dicey anyway. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just replace the entire thing with a new regulator that's got new hoses on it. But of course, it can't be easy because the threaded rod that goes all the way up, it was too tall and I couldn't get the old regulator off, and the screw on the bottom was rusted, and then it hit me in the face. And so now I just started to get frustrated, and I'm like, you know what? We're just going to cut this bottom bracket off right here, and then the top bracket just kind of wiggled off like that. So yeah, improvising. It's great. This new one only has one place where it holds it in on the threaded rod, and so I was like, there's no need to keep it. This is ridiculous. Okay, so I am just putting some Teflon tape on the threaded parts, and for some reason I always have a hard time remembering which way the Teflon tape goes. I've done it so many times, and still every time I get it wrong. And in my head it works and it makes sense, but then when I put it on, I'm like, this is wrong again. Why do I keep doing this the wrong way? Anyway, so y'all can have a laugh at that, because, you know, sometimes you just gotta laugh at yourself because nobody's perfect. All right, so now that it's threaded on the correct way, I can go ahead and install the main hose back into the hard line right there, which is fantastic that it's hard lined into the entire unit and not just flexible hosing throughout like most campers are. And then I can connect it and make sure that it doesn't leak. I just spray it with some soapy water after I turn the propane tank on. And if it bubbles up, then you know you have a leak. But it did not bubble up, so it worked perfectly. All right, so now I can go ahead and install that side piece to the cabinet that I was talking about earlier. And as you see, I haven't stapled that one shelf in so I can see where the framing is. I don't know why it got so dark right there. I apologize. But anyway, so I just put that piece of wood up. I've already stained it, and then I can kind of just staple it and tack it in. There is going to be another cabinet. No, do I have another cabinet there? I don't remember if I put another cabinet there. Maybe I didn't put another cabinet there. That's where the TV goes. Anyway, and so yeah, I just put that on, and then now I can go ahead and start putting in all of these trim pieces that I've stained right here. And as you can see, adding trim to this just makes it look so much nicer. It's more of a finished look, not of a rough look, and it feels really good when it starts to come together. And I can start trimming in all of these like random pieces that just kind of are an eyesore. And then for some of these pieces, I had to cope the trim, and I'm still not 100% good at it some of the time, but I feel like practice makes perfect. And I'll show you in the next clip what it looks like after you coat a piece of trim, and it just fits in nice and evenly when you have all these, that's it right there. When you have all these like weird corners, it just fits so nicely into the trim. And so once all of that is mostly completed in the bathroom and some of the weird funky pieces, I'm going to go ahead and take off the AC unit that I have already installed. And some of you may remember when I originally installed the AC unit a couple episodes back that I was like, this is a moot point because I'm going to have to take it off. So here it is. I set up my ladder and then I just didn't like how unstable it was. So I took it back down and then I put on my stabilizer, little bar things on the end there. Feel much better about that. And you'll see why in a minute. So if you ever are curious about how I get AC units up on the roof by myself, this is it. I basically make a giant slide for this giant box. So this AC unit is from Rec Pro. This is the one with the heat pump. I have installed several of these units. Absolutely love them. I have a full install video of this on my channel if you're ever interested in upgrading. I really like this one because if you just want a little bit of heat, you don't have to turn on your furnace for it. And it puts out a significant amount of air conditioning, and it's phenomenal. Anyway, so I have a rope right here that I'm pretty much just tying around the box. And the mistake I've made in the past is not tying that knot at the bottom low enough, because when you pull it, it kind of pulls toward the middle. And it just makes it a lot harder when you pull from the top of the box versus pulling from the bottom of the box. So this is really all it is I just kind of pull it up, and you see how my rope has my knot's kind of moved up toward the middle. Makes it way more difficult. And then once you get to the part where it's like almost over the top of the ladder, I'm like huffing and puffing by that point, but that's okay. We got it up there, and it's a one-person job and it's fantastic. All right, so now that it's up, here comes the fun part of installing it and removing the old AC unit. So when I do this, obviously I throw out all the cardboard because there's a million pieces of cardboard in there. I just move the old unit to the side, pick up the new unit, just like that, and kind of set it in place. And then the old one goes back in the box because I'm going to use the box to put this unit back down the same way I got the other one back up. So I'll just kind of position it remotely in the right spot. And then I'll take this box and wrap the rope back around it. And as you can see, I did not fully untie the rope. I kind of just slid it off. That way I didn't have to retie the whole thing once it was up here. Just kind of slid it. So now I've slid that back, and then I can put it on top of the ladder and lower it down. If you do this, just be careful not to let go too fast because you will get rope burn on your hands. Ask me how I know. And I know some people are like, oh, just chuck it off the side of the roof. Well, yeah, you can do that, but you do have to remember there's also Freon in these things, and you're going to have Freon leaking all over the place. I just prefer not to do that. So, I can get it up. I can get it down just as easily as I got it up, so might as well. So now I positioned it kind of relatively in the right spot with my hands. It's fairly easy to move around on the inside of the trailer, and now I'll just hook the wiring up. I will say on the other install unit that I had, the directions say to put self-leveling sealant around the AC gasket, and I've never done that, but this is the trailer that made me change my mind because the metal is made of aluminum. It's kind of like, it's not warped, but it's not a solid piece of wood, right? And so there's like divots and dips in it, and that caused this AC unit to leak after I had put it in. So this one I actually did end up going back and putting self-leveling sealant around it. So if you have a horse trailer with a metal roof, 100% recommend putting self-leveling sealant. And I think I'll probably do that just for trailers, from here on out, just to, ease my mind. All right, and this one I will say also does have an extension collar because it's a thick roof, and I also needed the extension bolts with it, which I thought I had ordered, but it did not come with the kit, which was very unfortunate, and Rec Pro was out of them and didn't have an ETA on when it was going to be in stock. And so I kind of ghetto rigged some bolts for myself, and then I ordered the correct bolts. And so, it doesn't leak. doesn't have any problems. But if I skip steps here, that's why. It's because at this current moment, I did not have the correct size bolts, but I can fasten the collar, the extension collar, to the inside piece. All right, so now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and use some caulk for some of these just pieces that just don't look that great. This is extreme stretch caulk. I do highly recommend the extreme stretch versus just the regular Alex's paintable caulk because, again, it does stretch a lot. I've noticed with Alex's when I use it in trailers, when I go back like 6 months later, sometimes it's cracked. And I really just don't like that, especially since I like to do quality work. And so I found this tip from, I can't remember who it was. It was another RV renovator that I follow, that I've been following for a while. I don't remember who it was. But anyway, that was a fantastic tip of using that specific caulk, and I haven't had any issues with cracking. All right, so this is that bathroom door with kind of like funky angles, and there's not really a good way to put trim there. So this is just melamine, iron-on melamine, and it looks really good. And as you can see, it is very hot in this trailer, and I finally got the bolts in and hooked up. So now I can turn it on and have air conditioning, and it's so fantastic. If you ever need a workout, just renovate a trailer in the middle of the summer. You'll sweat and sweat and sweat. Okay, so now it's time for some touch-up paint. Now that I'm finally done under here and everything is checked and ready to go, I'm going to paint it. And it just looks so much nicer and more of a finished look after this. I still have a couple more things to do, like install the propane detector down there where that wire is at the bottom, and just a couple other things. But for the most part, I can go ahead and paint this and then paint some of the random like trim pieces that I put up, especially in the cabinets. I'm also going to paint the inside of these cabinets. This is the kitchen cabinets, and for some reason I always just feel like it's more of a finished look if you paint the inside of the cabinets too. I know some people don't do that, but it really just bothers my ADHD, and I can't stand to look at it if I don't paint the inside of a cabinet. It irks me. Okay. So now that's done, and I'm going to move on to the bed part right here. Again, some people don't paint this, but I don't know why you wouldn't, because it makes it look so nice and seamless. So that's what I'm doing here. And this is the same color paint that I have on the walls. This is Cracked Pepper by Behr. It's one of my favorite colors because it's not like dark, 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 but it's also not a gray. It's more like a charcoal-y color, and it's fantastic. So now that everything is mostly painted, I can start putting the hardware on the cabinets and installing the cabinet doors. And I feel like this was a day that I never thought was going to come. Anyway, and I just realized, and I'm sure some of you probably noticed this too, about the inside of that cabinet. I didn't paint it because it was original and it didn't bother me. So that's why I didn't paint that one cabinet, but all of the rest of them I did because I rebuilt those cabinets. So when I specifically say it irks me that I didn't do it, it's only on the ones that are like plain wood and don't match anything else. So maybe I'm a hypocrite now. I don't know. That one didn't bother me for some reason. Maybe my brain is broken. Okay, anyway, back on track. So this is a lot of cabinet doors. These were all the cabinet doors that I sanded down, stained, and then put polyurethane on. And they do actually look pretty good. Some of them have a little bit of the remnant of the old stain on it, but I think it kind of gives it a more, I don't know, Western, rugged, like a rugged look, which is kind of what my client was going for. She doesn't like things that were like absolutely perfect and just a little bit of character to it. And so I actually really liked how they turned out. This door I thought was funny because I originally installed it this way. And then when I went to close it, I sat there and I was like, I don't know why I did that. That was not the right way to install that door. And so on the next clip, you will see me, and I have flipped the door around to open on the other side because that makes way more sense. And see, doesn't that make much more sense than the way that I originally installed it? Yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. Moving on to this little area right here. This is just more storage. And And these hinges, I just got these hinges off of Amazon. They're not the standard RV hinges, but they do have, it's almost like it's not a soft close, but it doesn't make them slam like the other ones do. They're also inset, not inset in the cabinet, but they kind of curve around the inside of the cabinet door versus hanging out on the outside of the cabinet like a lot of other ones do. Okay, so this is the LP propane detector. Just going to go ahead and install a new one. In case you did not know, these expire every 8 years. So if you have one, or if your camper is older than 8 years, maybe check the date on it, because these do save lives, which is why they're in there. Detects if you have a propane leak, and if you didn't know, if propane leaks in your camper and it's not detected, you could die in your sleep. So please, please, please double check those. All right, more cabinets, and sorry for the kind of weird angle, but it's really hard to film in this bathroom because it's so small. So there's two cabinet doors there, and then there's one on the bottom that I installed too, where the water heater is. Now we can move on to something fun, which is tile. I always really like to do tile in campers. And usually I do like a white or a black. I'm really a big fan of like solid color tiles, but that's not what my client wanted. So I got something with a little more character and a little more of those brown tones. I wanted it to kind of pick up the brown tones of the couch and the stains. So that's why I have this kind of mixed tile here. Anyway, so I like to lay it all out beforehand. This is such a small area and it's so easy to do. So I lay it all out to make sure that I don't have like a weird like 1/8 inch piece of tile that I have to have on one side or another, and kind of just see where I want to make my first cut and what makes the most sense. Not too terribly worried about what the bottom part of it looks like, because the countertop is going to stick up against that anyway and cover the bottom piece. What I mostly want is for it to be level and not look off when I put the countertop in. So these are just, I don't know if these are glass, or I think these are glass or maybe porcelain tiles, but they're just lightweight tiles. They're nothing super thick or super heavy. I think it's actually Lowe's. Lowe's has a whole bunch of these styles of like lightweight glass tiles, and they're absolutely perfect for campers because each sheet weighs like 2 pounds and they look fantastic. Everybody's always like, oh, it adds so much weight to your RV. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe don't add another pack of hamburgers or something in your camper if you're really worried about the weight of the tile. I mean, it's not that significant and it's not that serious. If you're worried about the weight from 10 pounds of tile, I think there's another issue here. And yes, weight adds up, and I always get that question, but that's why you have to give and you have to take. Now, I do have another full video on my channel about how I install tile more in depth and more specifically the supplies that I use. But I use it's called a muscle bound, I don't know. It's a tile mat, basically an adhesive tile mat. Absolutely love it. It's fantastic. And then this is a lightweight, flexible grout. So if you know anything about RVs, you have to have it flexible. And this really does make a mess. It's kind of yuck, which is why I put the plywood there. And I will say my neighbor did this exact same thing in her trailer that she's got. She's got a coffee food truck, Cruising with a Bruising, my favorite coffee ever. And she's had it in there for 4 years and it looks the same as it did the day her husband installed it. So, and all of the trailers that I have seen, that I've gone back to, like my client trailers, absolutely same thing. Never had any issues with it cracking or them coming up or anything like that. So the most important thing at the end for me is cleanup, because if you don't clean the grout off of this really well, it will stick and it'll leave a hazy residue, kind of like any type of grout does. And then I can go ahead and put in my trim piece right here. This kind of covers up that ugly window covering because I didn't trim out everything else. And when I realized, I was looking at it, I'm like, why does it look off so much? And it's because the window in this trailer was put in crooked. So I kind of had to compensate the angle of the window to make the window look like it was straight again. So that was super fun. Trailers are so fun, guys. Okay, moving on. So we're finally getting a toilet too. This is fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and screw in that flange to the floor, and then I can go ahead and put my new bolts in. I did get new bolts and a new seal for this toilet. I always do that every time I take a toilet off. It's just peace of mind. A new seal for the toilet is like less than $10, which includes the bolts too. So it's always a good idea just to go ahead and replace it if you're going to take your toilet off. And it's really just a matter of kind of the same thing as a house toilet, honestly. There's 2 bolts that hold it to the flange and a water line that hooks up, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so now I can move on to making the countertops and a table and the step that you're actually going to step on to go up onto the bed. So this first one is the countertop. This is the sink that I chose. It's just like a decent size. I mean, it's a smaller sink, but it's pretty big for that size trailer. There's a template that it comes with, and I kind of just lay it out and see where it would go. There's really no like rhyme or reason to where I put the sinks. I do it to what feels most comfortable when I'm standing in front of it, and how far or back I need to go in order to make clearance for the depth of the sink. So if I have cabinets or something underneath, then I'm going to have to move the sink over some to kind of avoid those cabinets so I don't have to cut any of the drawers or anything else out. So this is a deep sink, meaning I think it's maybe, 8 inches deep. Like it's pretty deep. Just because I don't like shallow sinks, they bother me. And so I don't install them. And then my client also wanted a gas stove in there too, just a little cooktop right there. So I'm going to put a new one of those in as well. That does not come with a template, so I just had to measure it and cut it out. And you notice I am measuring and drawing on the back side of the countertop, not the front side. And I'm doing it before I cut anything to make sure that it's the right spot, because I don't want to waste 3/4 inch plywood because it is very expensive. All right, so now that I know everything will fit, I do cut a pilot hole in it just because it makes life a lot easier. And sometimes I reuse these pieces of wood for like a sink cover or like a cover that goes on top if you just want extra storage space. Again, I'm cutting it upside down because if you don't, then it'll leave like jagged edges from where the jigsaw is trying to like pull up that wood. And you want your smooth side to be the countertop side and your jagged side to be the bottom part that nobody's ever going to see. So just make sure that you're cutting it from the bottom and not the top. And there you go. It looks great. I don't think I'm actually using these for anything else. And so I'm going to put that to the side and I'm going to start. This is a table. So my client wanted a table that's going to kind of sit in front of the couch. And it's not a huge table. There's obviously not a lot of room for anything there. So this is really just going to be something small where maybe 1 or 2 people can sit on it and have dinner or breakfast or whatever. And then with any of my countertops or my tables, I like to round out the edges with my oscillating sander. I specifically like this one because if you try to use a hand sander and do this, your hand can kind of wobble up or down unintentionally, and then you don't have an even curve. This, I can hold the wood at the point and then kind of round it out to make sure it's even all around. And if you don't make sure that it's even on the curve, then when you go to put your edge banding on, some of it'll kind of like stick out or stick in more, and it doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as if your corners would be perfectly rounded and flat against each other. So same thing here with this oscillating sander. I don't remember what this piece is. This is the piece to the TV stand is what this is. And then this last piece right here is going to be the step. So this is kind of like a funky cut. There's a long skinny piece and then there's kind of a bigger piece. And the whole point of it is just to be able to step up and get up on the bed, because if you've ever been in a horse trailer, it's really hard to actually get up on the bed. especially with somebody who has long legs saying that, I feel like that's probably significant. And sometimes my clients even ask me to put 2 steps up, which is ideal. All right, so now that everything is sanded and rounded out, I'm going to go ahead and put the edge banding in. And I don't know if you know anything about plywood, but it's kind of like glued together really thin sheets of wood. And so the edge is not very pretty. And that's why I like to put edge banding on, especially if I am staining it, because it gives it a nice smooth, like seamless look, and it makes it look like it's just a really thick piece of wood. So I put that edge banding on. This is my iron. It's the only time you'll ever see me ironing anything, which I think is hilarious. We don't just iron clothes in our house. I don't know why, but now my iron is made its way out to the shop, and that's where it's been for years. Just make sure when you're sanding it, you're sanding the edge in and not out. So in a clockwise motion, not a counterclockwise motion, because sometimes you can accidentally kind of flake the edge banding off of the side if you go against it and not with it. All right, so now that they're all made, I can go ahead and stain them. Again, this is the same stain color as everything else. And then I will, after this is stained and dried, put some polyurethane on it. I think that's the next episode. But this is finally starting to come together, and it's fantastic. And I'm sorry it's taken me a year to get through this footage, which is hilarious. But, you know, ADHD and kids and life and all that stuff. Anyway, see you guys next time. Have a good night.